Good morning or good afternoon to all those that have joined today's webinar from whatever location that you join us. We'll be starting in just a few short seconds. So this session will be recorded and available later today on demand. If anybody has got any questions during this session, please post them in the comments section and we'll be able to discuss any questions in time allowed at the end. So I hope that you have joined us because you've considered or been questioning or maybe wondering what exactly load balancing is and how offering your clients a load balancing solution can maybe help you lower support costs and increase your value add. Well, in this interactive session, IT business growth expert Richard Tubb will be speaking with Tim Swainson from Kemp Technologies about the benefits of load balancing. Why is it that customers are asking for load balancing solutions now more than ever? Is it something to do with COVID? What do we need to consider? And why is this technology a real world value add changing solution for the next generation of service providers? For those of you who are joining us that use load balancing, either from Kemp or maybe alternative options, we look forward to providing you with some additional areas to consider. And any MSPs that are joining who haven't considered load balancing solutions for your businesses, we hope that you will walk away from this session with a better understanding of why successful and profitable MSPs are offering an always-on application experience to their customers. So, let me introduce Richard Tubb. He's one of the best known experts within the global IT managed service provider community. He launched and sold his own MSP business before creating a leading MSP media and consultancy practice. Today, Richard helps IT business owners take back control by freeing up their time and building a business that can run without them. He's also the author of the book, The IT Business Owner's Survival Guide, and the writer of the award-winning blog found at tubblog.co.uk. So it's with great anticipation that we hand over to Richard to discuss this key subject. Why is load balancing a missed value add opportunity for MSPs? Over to Richard.
Thank you, Tim. Good to see you. Hello, everybody joining us today from home, wherever you are in the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good day. And yeah, I'm Richard Tubb. I am at home in the studio garage in Newcastle upon Tyne, which is in the northeast of the UK. Really good to see you, Tim, and for setting this whole event up. Been a lot of interest in it, and I think I'll probably kick things off, sort of answering your question about load balancing, because I used to be a managed service provider, and I must admit load balancing was something that rarely sort of came on my radar. But in my current role, helping IT business owners to free up their time and concentrate on what's important, load balancing has come onto my radar, because any tool or solution that can help MSPs to reduce the time they spend supporting clients and additionally to increase their revenue, well, I really want to know a lot more. Most solution providers that I have spoken to are sort of vaguely aware of load balancing as a technology. That might be you as well if you're joining us, but perhaps you're not sure of how to apply the technology in the real world. So to give you an insight into sort of my background here, I recently took on a role as an advisor to Kemp Technologies specifically on their managed service provider strategy. So I took this role on because I see the Kemp products as a real golden opportunity for MSPs to expand their offerings. And as I said, lower your cost of support, increase your revenue. That is the key to managed services. And over the recent months, I've learned a lot more about Kemp as a business. So for instance, recently I interviewed the Kemp CEO, Ray Downs, about the opportunity in load balancing for MSPs. You can check that out on my Tubb Talk podcast. It's a fantastic interview, if I say so myself. Ray really does sort of share tons of great information about how load balancing fits into the MSP solution stack. So as a result, like that interview opened my eyes to the breadth of the opportunity in load balancing for solution providers. So I think it's for good reason that Kemp is one of the fastest growing businesses in the tech space. And what I'd like to do, Tim, if I may, to kick things off, is give perhaps a quick primer to people who are joining and perhaps load balancing as a new technology to you. What I'd suggest is that you would be better off thinking of load balancing as a technology to power an always-on application experience for clients. Kemp have actually coined this phrase. They call it AX, application experience. Or the other way to think of it is, as Tim and mine's buddy, the man with the coolest name in the channel, Sid Bloodsore, who is a fellow Kemp colleague, says, load balancing is about making sure that the application is available all of the time. So load balancing tech allows you to mitigate the risk of an application going offline by balancing the application load across multiple service points. So with that said, today we're going to dig a little bit deeper into what load balancing truly is and what the opportunity is for your solution provider business to use load balancing solutions to lower your cost of support and to increase your revenue. Now, the man you've already heard from today briefly, I'm going to introduce. He is the expert in this field. His name is Tim Swainson, and he's the Cloud and Service Provider Manager at Kemp, and somebody with a wealth of knowledge that you'll be hearing from a lot today. Tim, thank you for organizing this. Now, I've given my view of what load balancing is. How would you describe what load balancing is and perhaps isn't?
Yeah. There are a couple of views of load balancing, and rightly so, in the world of technology. And the one that we commonly discuss with customers is when they respond with, no, it's okay, load balancing is taken care of with my firewall. And that would be the sort of load balancing that we do know and we do use quite regularly, which is sort of link load balancing, taking of a couple of XDSL or WAN connections and load balancing connections across that. Great technology. And something that companies will be using. But the load balancing that Kemp provide is actually server and application load balancing. So we offer a technology that ensures, as you've rightly pointed out, that when we're looking at optimizing connections to an application or a server, the load balancer will take control of the decision to make sure it reaches the right connection. And as you rightly said, as Sid said, making sure the application is available all of the time is the best way of describing the load balancing that we'll be referring to this afternoon.
Yeah, and we don't want to, we should be at strains here to say we don't want to teach anybody to suck eggs.
Yeah.
But at the same token, I came into this relationship with a view of what load balancing was, and I've been educated to it. So I know there's a lot of MSPs, a lot of solution providers out there that have got a view of what load balancing is. And perhaps what we're going to talk about today is a more up-to-date way of thinking about that. So I want to jump onto something. I mentioned it. Kemp have coined this term of application experience, which I think is a really good way to talk about, sort of load balancing or the technology. Tell us more about the Kemp application experience, or AX.
Yeah, the AX, the phrase is obviously follows our address at our website, .ax, and a lot of people go, so where's that from then? Where is AX? Well, it's application experience. We've coined that phrase. And it's really the ability for Kemp to power that always-on application experience. Now, it's not just about load balancing when we come to the application experience. It plays a very big part in that. Load balancing is what Kemp do specialize within. But it's a combination of those other tools that Kemp provides to our partners that really enable that experience to be delivered. Now, for a lot of people, that load balancing is there for when it breaks. Okay, so the server's no longer accessible, the application has gone down for whatever reason. When those circumstances need to be avoided, load balancing would be first on the list for a lot of people. But it's not always about when it breaks. Let's think about the occurrence or the change in the number of connections, the need for more people to make use of the service now, perhaps in a remote instance. To maintain that application experience for everybody needs more than just the basic load balancing that many people may have used for a number of years.
Yeah. So for those of you who are joining us live today, please use the Q&A box, the question box. We want to make this as interactive as possible. Feel free to give us your questions and we will make sure that I will pin Tim down to answer every single question that we get through today. You can also tweet us at Kemp Tech and at Tubblog, Tubblog on Twitter, and I'll make sure to filter all of these questions, the live questions, through for Tim today. So if you see me glancing away to the side, it's not because I'm not interested in what you're saying, Tim. I'm keeping an eye on the Q&A box as well. If you're watching the recording of this, I'm going to make sure to give both of our contact details towards the end of the presentation, so you can ask any follow-up questions that you have of us. So let me jump straight in. Some of the questions that we're getting from people are around, could you give practical examples of how clients use load balancing? Give us some real world examples here, Tim, of how people are using load balancing.
Yeah, we certainly can. And this is something that fortunately we've got a couple of slides prepared for. So I'm going to jump to a couple of those just to aid us in the discussion points that we have now. So when we start looking at the sort of use cases, we see them very effectively in the likes of business continuity. Now, within the business continuity that customers are looking to deliver, it's really quite key to be able to identify quickly the applications that people will be using. So, for example, if you're hosting an email service, you're providing any unified communications, if you're using any collaboration tools, ERP systems, or any web content. We also see a number of people using us in the bespoke deployments of applications that they may have, e-commerce, to make sure those connections remain. That business continuity is a key use case for when it comes to the use of load balancers. Now we have, in this current point in time, we're obviously seeing a great strain on systems around COVID, and that's changed the way many businesses would use or view the access to their systems for remote access. Now, we've been involved in many conversations, some that have been surprised about how little impact this has caused and how straightforward it's been for users to connect remotely. But we're now in that position where a number of people are looking at how remote working is something that's likely to stay in place for them as a business, for their users. So being able to adapt to that is where a lot of the conversations are being had now with service providers, to not only put that sort of service in place and have it as a robust service, but also to utilize some of the tools that are available. Key topic at the moment around always-on VPN. A lot of deployments are being made via Kemp to allow the simpler deployment of the likes of always-on VPN, and really making sure that this as a service is deployed not only following the best practice, but the best practice guides of the vendors themselves to deploy solutions such as Kemp. So if we were to look at some of the sort of practical examples of how these are being used at the moment, two key ones: business continuity and supporting remote work to give that scalability and also ensure that disaster recovery plans are met, would be a good way of summing that scenario up for us, really, Richard.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to dig a little bit deeper into this if I can as well, Tim. So one thing that became clear to me at the interview that I did with Ray Downs, and it's the title of our webinar today, you know, I've started to understand that load balancing is a missed value add opportunity for MSPs, for solution providers. So can you give me some more real world examples of day-to-day activities that MSPs maybe carry out that would benefit from load balancing?
Yeah, certainly. So when we look at the sort of service providers that make use of our tools now, we've got plenty of recommendations that you can take a glance at our websites. But I thought I'd just share maybe some of the conversations that they have with service providers. It's great to see the sort of use cases that are coming to us and the questions that they're asking. And maybe if we share some of these, it will help some on the webinar today to maybe understand some of these scenarios that they're going through themselves. So we work with many service providers that are looking to deploy certain applications that will better suit their customers. They might already be using some form of load balancing. Microsoft ARR is one that comes up quite regularly in the discussions that we have. And the need for them to be able to expand perhaps a little bit further than their current deployment will allow them to, gives them a need then to look at alternative solutions. And Kemp does position itself very effectively in that sort of scenario. So we've got other scenarios where we talk to customers about the ease of the license types that we offer, the flexibility of the licenses that we provide. But some of those key sort of areas that we've already discussed, those use cases that customers will be looking at, is really making sure that that service that they're providing, that application that they're looking to host, deploy, or recommend to be used within their customer's environment is something that they can implement a load balancing solution into. And a lot of the conversations come from those deployments have begun, those applications have been started, and then they've looked at documentation from the provider, the application that they're deploying, and it actually advises the use of load balancing, which is something that many people do need to take a look at. We've got many recommendations and many testimonials on our website. One of the newest ones is from the team at ImageTrend. And ImageTrend themselves were struggling with their solution that was deployed, and that vendor themselves recommended that they take a look at Kemp as a product. And we've got a great case study that's recently been provided that explains the steps that they've taken and the services they provide in supporting their healthcare and fire service customers that they deal with.
Cool, excellent. So I want to ask you a question as a salesman here, Tim. So when I ran my managed service provider business, it's a business I sold about 9-10 years ago now. But when I ran the business, no two ways around it. The reason I ran it is because I'm a geek. I'm really good with technology. I love technology and how technology can help clients to do things, faster, better, cheaper. What I've learned to do over the years when it comes to solutions such as the Kemp and the application experience is to start asking qualifying questions of clients. So I guess my question for you here, Tim, how can those solution providers who are watching today map out requirements? Are there any qualifying questions that you can suggest as a salesman that we could start asking clients to see if there's an opportunity there?
Yeah, there's plenty of qualification questions that we can have and really make sure that we're getting the most across in the way in which we can identify those opportunities. When we look at the sort of examples that we've got, it will easily help us identify where those applications might come into play. But we'll just look at some of those scoping questions. We provide documentation really to help us put those together. So a little example there, hopefully on the screen that people can see of some of the check boxes that we would run through on a call, making sure that the applications that are being deployed or the applications that need to be deployed, if they have a requirement for load balancing, where does it fit? How does it fit? Has it been considered? And what sort of SLAs need to be met to really make sure that that service is going to meet those expectations of our customer. So
Tim, sorry to interrupt, Tim. Is this this looks like a very useful document? Is this something that you use internally, or can you make it available to viewers today?
So this document would be an internal document that we would use on any of the calls that we have with customers. If it is something that a customer or a partner that we're working with would like to take away and make sure they're asking all the right questions, we're happy to share it. Yeah.
Super. Yeah. Forgive the interruption. I just know that I'm not the only one looking at that document and thinking, this is brilliant.
Of course. So yeah, this the way in which we like to identify those opportunities is really by sharing some real life examples of companies that have taken our product and used it. We've got one on the screen now of a UK home builder, Keepmoat, and how they use the solution such as Always On VPN. Have we got time maybe just to expand on some of the other use cases, some of the different...
Yeah, absolutely. If we find ourselves constrained for time, I shall gently chivvy you along, but please go for it, yeah.
Good plan. So Always On VPN, we're seeing a lot of use cases for that at the moment, as we've discussed in the previous. But when we look at where Kemp really has a play within service providers solutions, we cover a number of different locations. Automation is a big one that we're being asked to assist with. So with integration with the likes of PowerShell and REST API, to name some of the tools that service providers are using, they're creating virtual services and responses via Kemp, which can then automate a number of perhaps manual timely tasks and responses. If that's something that you would identify as a service provider as being a good time saver for you, then we've got a lot of documentation available to assist with that. And then really back to the guys I mentioned earlier, ImageTrend, their view was that we're able to roll out deployments of virtual load master, which is the way in which our product is provided, they were able to do that much smoother, much quicker than they had done previously. And then with templates that Kemp provide, they were able to make use of the automation to roll out those services in a much quicker, streamlined approach. So it's really being able to make use of those tool sets that are available in a way that's going to save you time. And if we were then to add that to services that you're using, let's just think of the additional resources that companies are having to spin up at the moment. Those additional servers, those additional SSL VPN appliances, all of these technologies that they've been used to using in an inbound approach with staff working from one location are now needing to be published externally so that users can connect into those remotely. Is there enough resource? Is there enough capability of the equipment that you've got in place to handle all of those connections? Another use case as to where load balancing can actually be used. So just a couple of snapshots there on some of the use cases that we are really seeing now. So perhaps just come back to the camera now and we can see if there's any questions that you've got.
Yeah, so if you are joining us live, please use the Q&A box to get your question. I can see, Tim, we've got questions coming in already. I'll get to those shortly. I want to ask you a question, and if I can, up front, though, and I want to put you on the spot a little bit here.
Okay.
So I like to view the entire market, and I like to keep my finger on the pulse of what's going on in the solution provider space. So the reason, that I've been advising Kemp on the managed service side of things is that I firmly believe that load balancing is going to be something that in 18 months to 3 years is going to be something that all MSPs are like, yeah, of course we use load balancing. But right now, I can understand the progressive solution providers have jumped in there, but perhaps not everybody is aware of the opportunity. With that in mind, of course, people are on a Kemp webinar today. They're hearing from Tim Swainson, who is an expert in Kemp Technologies. But what does the whole market look like? So let me put you on the spot. Can you talk about competitors? And I know I should say up front, there are open source alternatives out there. So talk to me a bit, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, just about what the whole market looks like.
Yeah, definitely. This is the sort of conversations that we have to have quite regularly with the hosters and the service providers that we work with. The market is vast. There's a number of vendors within the space that we operate within. And as you rightly say, there are open source products available and they have their place. The open source solutions are there for a reason. The sort of scenarios that we see those used within do lend themselves then to our products being considered. So, for example, they'll be used in test and development. They'll be used in scenarios, and often from the providers of them, they're only for those environments. They're only for test and dev. So they're not really fit to move into the live environments. So you have to be careful as to which ones you are using. But there are different providers out there. We see HA proxy a lot. They'll be used for a number of companies that need to provide that low-cost entry point for a small requirement. But then you will start to have, if you do need support or you do need additional features, there will be costs that come into place to use that product. And we do see the complete array being used. So we've got the open source solutions being used for some of the smaller companies. We then start moving through the different build types and the increase in SLAs, the different security requirements that will be required. So then a paid for solution will be used. Now, we do get the opportunity to be that paid for solution for a number of the companies that we work with, but there may be alternatives. For many people, F5 and Citrix would probably be the first name they're aware of in the market. There are then going to be other vendors that they may be aware of. We've got loadbalancer.org, we've got Barracuda, we've got Avi. There's a lot of different solutions that people can use. And it's often the case that they will use different vendors within their portfolio. So what Kemp really aimed to get across here is that instead of using vendor A in one section of your business, vendor B in another section of your business, and maybe vendor C for your cloud environment, Kemp have the ability to cover all of those areas for you. And with the licenses that we offer, we aim to be flexible enough for you to be able to meet the cost requirements of each of those stages and give you the size of license that's actually required for each of those installs that you have. back then to one license, one contract, one support portal, and one training course. You know, simplifying that whole approach, speeding up that time for delivery, reducing that time to repair or respond, and really taking advantage of those 24/7 support services that we offer across all of that platform.
Cool. That makes absolute sense. We're getting plenty of questions come through. I will save them for a little while. We'll come back. We're getting questions about AWS, Azure. We're getting questions about competition and open source as well. I'll come to those shortly, Tim. Keep your questions coming in if you're watching us live. One of the questions, or to paraphrase some of the questions that we're getting through, though, and it's around security. So you often, Kemp, talk about next-gen load balancing. So I'm intrigued, and we're getting lots of questions coming through about how does security and load balancing sort of go hand in hand?
Yeah, the security area is something that the industry kind of made a change on when load balancing was something that people would offer the layer 4, when we moved to the layer 7 capabilities of load balancing. So how is it that those applications are really performing? So the integration of tools such as reverse proxy and web application firewall is something that Kemp has introduced. This has been in place in our licenses for a number of years. And if you're used to accessing our products via the perpetual route, you would have to apply different service levels to the appliances that you've purchased. Or with our monthly licenses, we wrap that all in for you, and we can talk about that in a bit more detail. But what we're here to provide really is when it comes to those applications that are being accessed, we're making sure that the best connection is available to the user that's connecting, the best experience is provided. And then at the same time, we can also cover a couple of the security requirements. Now, another great use scenario we've got is when it comes to actual connections to web services. Self and Sid were reading a document last week, and it actually referred to challenges that companies might face with SSL connections and all these different things. One of the areas that we picked up on was the time in which people would class as acceptable for you to connect to a web service.
Okay.
It was 8 seconds. 8 seconds was the time that people were willing to wait for a web service when you've connected. Now, you think of all of the things you've got to connect through, and you've got your SSL service to connect through, you've got your authentication, you've got all these different criteria you've got to connect to be able to get to that service. You can start to hand some of those services across to the load balancer, for example, SSL offloading or SSL acceleration, then we can actually rapidly reduce that time it takes to connect to that service. At the same time as doing that, we're also looking at the reputations we're looking at how that action is carried out, and using the web application firewall rules that we obviously receive from the likes of Trustwave and other sources. We're looking then to see whether or not there's any criteria or anything that would turn that as or see that as a bad actor, and then we can drop those connections. So not only do we speed up the connection, we can also look at how it's acting to make sure it's definitely a secure.
Very cool. Web application firewall, you've mentioned it a couple of times. Explain to me how that works. Yeah,
so it's a discussion that we're having with a lot of people at the moment. A lot of companies are coming to us because they've had an audit, and that audit is saying that web application firewalling is missing, or it's advised that it should be put into place. Now, in the world of web application firewalling, there are companies that provide it as a standalone product. So in the same way that Kemp provide load balancing as a standalone product, then web application firewall providers are also available. So what we do with our web application firewalling is using common rule sets and maintaining the top 10 of the common security threats that need to be in place. We've got the criteria that we match. We're making sure that the addition of web application rules are in place. A number of them are ready to go, and they're pre-built in the templates that we provide. So if a company is looking for that simple way to say connection, sped up, connection is used, and we want a level of security in place that goes beyond what the standard firewall can provide for our customer. Okay, we're not there to replace the common security solutions that customers would be using. We're there as a second authority, a complement to those, just to make sure that when these services are now being opened up to users, to more users from more locations, they're getting that extra security check to make sure that those threats are reduced.
Got it. Makes sense. Now, I mentioned I used to be a managed service provider. I try to put myself in the shoes of managed service providers who are watching today, Tim. And one of the questions that's going to come up about Kemp Technologies, and specifically the web application firewall, WAF, if we can call it that, going forward, is integration. How does this integrate with the other tools and services that I'm using at the moment? So can you speak to the integration part at all?
Yeah, certainly can do. So the advantage we've got with the API integration that we have, we can take the reports, we can take the information and feed that into any tools or vulnerability assessment scans that companies may be needing to provide. If those are subjects that people would like to know more about, then hey, our documentation goes into great detail about how they can be set up, what categories we can provide protection against, and what checkboxes can be put into place to meet certain levels of compliance. So there will be different guides that people will have. They'll have their PCI and their compliance that they need to look at. We'll be able to see whether or not we're the right solution to meet those requirements for you outside of the load balancing that we specialise with.
Just keeping an eye on questions here. Keep your questions coming in if you're joining us live here. One area I find where vendors struggle a little bit, if I put you on the spot here again, Tim, for you, mate, I promise. But licensing. So you've already alluded to the licensing earlier, but what I find that MSPs, especially managed service providers, look for in vendors is flexible licensing, and licensing that's friendly to solution providers. Now, I know you've got different licensing schemes. Perhaps talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, this is usually around when I'm talking to a service provider and asking them, you know, what do they look for? What does a good vendor look like to them? It's usually good then that we have a nice conversation with service providers about what their best vendor relationship looks like, feels like, sounds like. And we can usually then gather some tips. And as you rightly say, one of the ones that comes up is licensing. Now, because this is quite a big subject, I've got some slides to back me up on this particular one. So let me just bring those in, and we can perhaps identify where it is that the licenses that we have are something that we can use. And then perhaps we'd like to cover off in a bit more detail some of the comparisons that we've got with different vendors.
Yeah, please do.
Just briefly earlier. So we're really here to make sure that the approach that we have for our partners is as flexible as it possibly can be. Now, we do maintain the approach that we have the most flexible load balancing options available within the market. And the reason we can say that is because we've got virtual load balancers, we've got cloud load balancers, and we do have the hardware load balancers that would still have a fit for many customers in the deployments that they need to cater for. And really where our license types then differ and the opportunities we have, I've hopefully got a good representation on the screen now, where you can take our products perpetually. They can be physical or virtual. We've got our service provider license agreement, so we can talk to service providers that are going to take our product and host it on their own environment and support their customers' environments for them, or host their applications for them and provide a service. The flexibility of that license actually comes with no commitment, and that can be paid for on a month-by-month basis. The key benefit for this license is for a service provider to take it and use it and pay for what they've needed to use. So it's rather than look at projects that are coming up and need to understand what the peak throughput's going to be for that appliance that they're going to deploy or that service they're going to deliver, it's really deploy our licenses, use it. If it doesn't quite meet your requirements, change it up, change it down. You have the flexibility within the use of our licenses to take the license that fits for you. And at the end of each month, we'll take a look at what you've used in that license pack and then bill you for that. The other flexible options that we have would come with our metered license, again for a hosting company that might be deploying across multiple locations, 6 or 10 locations that they need to have pairs of load balancers at in each location, and maybe then for each of their customers, that can turn into quite an estate to manage. So if we turn all that into one license, allow you to deploy unlimited number of load balancers from that, and then be charged based on the consumption of those live licenses, it takes away for a number the sort of headaches that they might have with how much did that one cost, how much was used by that customer, how do we bill that? And then to finish off the offering, we've recently launched the pooled license. Now the pooled license is there for either a service provider or an enterprise customer that's got an estate of load balancers that they're looking to consolidate into one. It might be that they've already got devices deployed across a number of different vendors. It might be that they've got a number of Kemps that are deployed. But all of these licenses are incurring their own costs, their own licenses, different renewal dates, all these different challenges that can then be consolidated into that pooled license. Now that pooled license then becomes one cost. It can be monthly or yearly, and they can take from that the number of licenses to meet the amount of throughput that they've got. Ideally, the flexible approach that we provide here gives you the starting point of, would you like that as CapEx or OpEx? Which path would you like to go down? How would you like that to be deployed? How flexible do you need that service to become? And when we start having those conversations with the companies that have taken these options, it opens their eyes up to exactly how flexible they can be, and then maintain perhaps those expectations that have come about from the likes of the cloud providers that offer that on-off capability, that scale capability, that unlimited usage capability, all of which these challenges from many vendors would rely on heavy, costly upfront contracts with long terms of agreement, which we aim to remove with the different license types that we've got. If anybody wants to know more about those licenses, would like to trial any of those licenses, then I'm more than happy to pick up those conversations as time allows. Come back to the camera.
Very cool, Tim. I think the key thing that I will pick up there, I'm from the SMB, the small and medium-sized business world. Yeah. And I know many of the viewers joining us today will be from the SMB world as well. And perhaps load balancing is new. And we're thinking, okay, we want to dip our toe in the water. We want to have a look at this, but without any commitments. And it's really cool to see that you've got the SLA licensing up there. Absolutely no commitments. Just pay for what you use. This is a really, really low barrier to entry, isn't it?
It is. And we've also, with the change in the licenses that we introduced earlier this year, it was actually in April. Who'd have known the pandemic was well underway at that point. But we launched smaller entry points of actually only 50 meg. So 50 meg of per second application throughput has become a realistic size of license that service providers are asking for and are needing to deploy.
Yeah. So I'm conscious of time, Tim. You asked me to keep you on track here. So there you go. I'm cracking the whip. We've got a ton of questions coming in. So for anybody watching live, 2 ways you can ask questions. Use in BrightTalk, use the Q&A box, and all the questions that come through there are anonymous. So if you've got a burning question that you want to ask, feel free to ask away there, and I will make sure to ask Tim. And we've also, if you want to tweet us your questions, as many people have, it's at Kemp Tech on Twitter, and I'm at Tubblog, Tubblog, and we've got questions from both. So Tim, I'll jump straight in if I can, and we've got so many questions, I'll try and paraphrase some of the similar questions. I mentioned earlier, we've got at least 2 different MSPs asking the question. One says we use Amazon Web Services, AWS. Somebody else says we're using Azure. And to paraphrase both of the questions, why would we buy from Kemp?
Good question. Okay, not putting me on the spot at all, because this is a regular one.
With the AWS, the Azure world, I think what they're asking is, well, don't we get this sort of stuff, built in with Microsoft or with Amazon? I'm paraphrasing there, but yeah, why do we need a load balancer for that?
Yeah, so it's a definite question, and it is one that's perhaps introducing many service providers to the requirement for load balancing, because it is an option within the marketplace. And the advantage that we've got is Kemp is available in both of those marketplaces. Okay, so we are known to those environments. So why would you perhaps look at a Kemp solution? Let's call us a third-party solution when it comes to the native load balancing or the NLB that's available within AWS and Azure. The key reason is because they do what they do well, which is hosting. Okay, and we do what we do well, which is load balancing. And some of the key differences that we are able to identify and happy to share is the level of load balancing that we actually go to. So the number of rules, the number of scripts, and the number of types of services that we can add to the load balancing that they provide will take us or turn us into that service that you are really looking to offer. The biggest one as well is going to be lock-in. Okay, so if you're going to deploy into AWS and you're going to use their load balancer, or likely in Azure and use their load balancer, they're not going to speak to each other. Whereas you can actually deploy Kemp at both locations. Okay, you can even deploy us on your local infrastructure, your private, your public. We can exist in all of those environments, and we can talk to each of those locations using our load balancing. So if your scenario was to be using cloud to increase your footprint or increase your coverage because of applications that you're providing need more resource, if it is that that's expanding from a location, a local data center to you, or your own infrastructure, now it needs to go to cloud, we can speak between the two, and we can make sure that the connections between the two and the application experience is maintained between those two locations. So quick recap, we can do more, we add more security, and another key area is we actually need less resource within those cloud locations. So we can actually provide you with a more cost-effective way of delivering all of those features that you may be able to get by adding lots of different modules from those providers.
Yeah. Here's a question in a similar vein, and we've actually, you, me, and Sid have covered this in a separate video, so maybe I'll share on Twitter a tweet out to that video, but we'll ask it again for the live audience here. What's the difference between Kemp and Windows Load Balancer? Okay,
yeah, so a similar approach, and hopefully from the some of the slides that I shared earlier, the capabilities of Windows will get you to a certain point with those Windows Server environments that you're working with. In fact, what I might do here, because I had some slides that I didn't use in the previous discussion, I might just bring these up now because they might answer the question just that more than I did. So I sort of bring up this one here. So this example here, this slide covers the different templates that we've already got built. If you're looking at an environment that's built within a Windows Server environment, fantastic. You'll be able to tick a couple of your boxes, a couple of your requirements with your Windows NLB or ARR, as some of the previous slides referred to. But if you start looking then at different applications that need to reside on those, or a connection with a third-party product that's not supported by Microsoft, you're going to start hitting a couple of challenges. So if you were to use Kemp load balancing within that, we can then take you again with coverage of more environments, more virtual environments that wouldn't be covered by Microsoft, and then also, as just a very small example on the screen now, some of those other applications that we support. And then offering then the flexibility that we provide. Our support, we are dedicated towards load balancing. It is what we do, it's what we specialize within. And yeah, I have a little example here that was provided by marketing just before, some of the examples of our support that we provide as well. Now, one of the challenges we referred to earlier was the use of the Microsoft product. Support was a challenge for them. So if we were to compare ourselves to another vendor, we're always keen to point out our support that we provide. All deployments of Kemp load balancers come with support directly with Kemp, and that can then be, you can then match the level of support that we provide. We appear on a number of different sites to compare us against our competitors within the market, which is always quite kind, but also on our own website, just that little snapshot on the left there. We quite regularly receive 98% plus of good results within the support that we offer. So it's not always about features, it's not always about what the product can do over the other. It's maybe also as well about the support that we provide, and that's what we really do pride ourselves on, in the support that we offer. So hopefully that encapsulates that question.
It does, because one of the things I was going to bring up actually is, what does support look like? So for solution providers to enter into a new relationship effectively with a vendor partner, they want to know that, you know, they're not going to be selling these tools and then just be left on an island to fend for themselves.
Yeah, I've had some very good reports directly, and we always get the opportunity to share it internally. Recent service provider came to us, was not really fully aware of Kemp. They'd seen us, they'd used us. They'd seen us and were looking to use us, but we're not aware of how. So we put them in touch with support. They had a couple of to's and fro's. They were asking about certain questions, certain deployments with applications that, to be honest, were not ours. But because we're there to offer them a load balancing service, that business owner came back to me and said, your support, even though we haven't brought from you, your support has been outstanding. Obviously, they then went on to purchase from it. And those scenarios are common, because we're really proud with the level of support that we can provide.
Yeah, the questions are coming in thick and fast here, Tim. So we will try to get everybody's question. If we don't get to your question by the end, and I will make sure to crack the whips that Tim does, we will make sure to give our contact details so we can continue the conversation afterwards. But use the Q&A box in BrightTalk if you want to ask an anonymous question. Feel free to tweet us on Twitter if you want to start the conversation there. So actually, I'll go to social media. So a question here from Rashpal, who is a cybersecurity service provider, I believe. How does Kemp integrate with threat detection tools?
Yeah, so threat detection for many companies, if they're offering a security service, is going to be what they're going to need to see is coming from the vendors that they're going to look at. Now, we have discussed earlier about our web application firewall tools and the reverse proxy capabilities that we've got. So what we do provide with the API plugins is the ability for that information to be collected and then handed over to those threat management tools. Now, if anybody has got any exact examples of any tools that they're using, we would be glad to hear about them. And you'll probably find that there are other companies in our communities, other engineers within our team that are aware of them and have already used them. And we may have some documentation available to show how we integrate with those tools already. So anything like that, please don't think you've got to search for it yourselves. Throw us the names, ask us the questions, and we'll show you what examples we've got already. If we haven't got them, it's a new one for us. We will gladly see how we can work with those said vendors.
Yeah, and here's something I want to make very clear to if you're watching today and you're a solution provider. At the start of this webinar, of this conversation, I said that the reason that I was drawn to an advisory role with Kemp, which I've been upfront and honest about, is because I'm all about helping MSPs to lower their cost of support and to increase their revenue. What Tim has just said is something super important. Speak to Kemp and get them to do the legwork. So this is a hugely wide-ranging, encompassing solution. If you know, don't sit there Googling all day, every day, trying to find the answers here. Go to the guys at Kemp, ask them the questions, because this will lower your barrier to entry. They will do the work for you. And the guys have been really responsive, have been really good at answering all the questions that I brought, even about the competition. And you can see I've put Tim on the spot a couple of times about this. So again, please do reach out to Tim and his colleagues and ask these questions. Let them do the work for you, the heavy lifting, and come back, because you've got better things to do with your day than to do tons and tons of research when these guys are there to enabling you, to get the answers that you need to move forward. Right, let's have a look at some of the other questions. We've got a question coming here from BrightTalk. Can we see any comparisons with competition, F5, Citrix, etc.? I know you showed us the Gartner scores. Have you got anything to add to that, Tim?
Yeah, definitely. There are comparisons on our website.
Okay.
If you go to kemp.ax. There is actually, we've documented the differences. So we're not just there to say, hey, our support's great, speak to us. We'll also show the speeds. We'll show the features, the functions, and we're even brave enough to put our price in there, so that when you are looking at how this service can be built into the budgets that maybe you've got to meet within the service that you're building, come and take a look at our website and we'll show you how it is that Kemp does compare. Now, we're more than happy to go on a like-for-like comparison, a head-to-head comparison, to show you how our tools can be used. We've got access to our engineers. You've mentioned my colleague Sid. We've also got Dave Flax in the UK, and also the great support team that we've got for this region that's based out of our offices in Limerick, in Ireland. So you've got access to our support to be able to put those examples together with you. If it is that you've got an opportunity and you want to talk to your customer about it as well, if your customer is there saying, no, I've seen this product, it's the one that we want to go for, allow us to have that conversation with them directly. Put us in a conversation with them, and we tend to find that once we've seen what the requirements are, what applications need to be load balanced, and the use cases that we can then provide based on the customers that use us already, it's pretty straightforward to compare us, and we're more than happy to, as you have been using a couple of times, be put on the spot. We'll take the challenges. We're happy for them. It does help us get involved with customers. We tend to find that there's three times that the customer gets involved. We're either on their portfolio, or load balancing is something they know, and they architect it into everything they build, and they come and say, great, I'll have another Kemp, thank you very much. There's others that have deployed something, they've put it into action, they've built a service, they've taken a solution from another vendor, and then they've gone, it's not quite working the way it should do. We need some load balancing, go get some. And then the third one is often the more common. It's gone live, it's being used, they've read the documentation, and it says load balancing is needed for high availability and failover, and they're, there's no budget left, where are we going to get this from? So what we're looking for from this session that we've done today is really educate people as to perhaps some of the use cases, some of the real life examples, and ideally time saving and the reduction in cost with the different tools that we can offer, with the templates that we provide, that full service that we can be part of.
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out actually to yourself, Tim, to the man with the coolest name in the channel, Sid Bloodsaw, your colleague, to Ray Down, and to the whole Kemp team, because I have put you on the spot numerous times. I have said, hey, here's a question here, here's a question I've got, here's a question that MSP has asked. So I know we've got this webinar today, but we've got a whole wealth of video podcast interviews where I've just kept throwing these questions at you, and to your full credit, and this goes for you, Tim, and for the entire organization, you've been really transparent, really open and honest about talking about what Kemp does and doesn't do. And that's, I know the feedback I'm getting from people, podcast listeners, and from people who watch the videos and stuff is, you're building that trust up. So I hope today's webinar as well can help point people towards some of those resources. To that point, let me put you on the spot again, now that I've said nice things about you. We got a question here from Twitter, from social. This is from Rob, who I believe is a distributor, actually. Really interesting question. What is Kemp's intellectual property and what is open source? So that's a good question. So what's yours and what's open source?
Yeah, that sounds just like a Disty comment. No, and it's a good one to ask, because there are load balancing providers out there that will take open source, put it on a box, and offer it as their own product. You've got to be careful as to really where that technology is really coming from. Now, Kemp's access to open source is across the whole of providers. Is those tools are there to be used. They're there to provide a level of service. What Kemp do to really make the difference here is it's our own technology that makes the load balancing really happen. Okay, so our scripting, our rules that we build, and our load master as we provide it is actually our own build to make sure that load balancing is meeting all of those requirements, and then integrating some of the open source for the security. So we're very open and honest about our WAF product. We utilize Trustwave for that one, an industry leader in the provision of said security levels, and we build that again into our own products that we deliver. So it's a good question to ask, and it's probably one that's come from, unfortunately, being bitten by somebody taking a product and then going for some support and realizing that it's not quite everything it said it would do. So that's an experience that many have seen across many different vendors. But the load master itself and the build that we provide And the support then we provide for that is where we really make sure and we show that we're offering a product that people can use.
Good. So we've got 3 different types of questions here. But they're very similar. I'm going to try and paraphrase them for you. What would you say is your unique selling point from a load balancer perspective? And this is feeding on from the question that Rob has just asked.
Yeah.
So I'm getting a gist here. I'm just going to make this point. So there's lots of people, I think, who have either got load balancing or have tried load balancing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's perhaps not hit the mark. And so skeptical is not the word that I'm going to use, but people are asking you to be transparent. So what's your unique selling point from a load balancer perspective?
Yeah, it's there's a couple of ways in which we could answer that, but if I use what our company's message really is to get across, is the powering of the always on, the always on application experience. We want to be unique in the way that's offered. We want to be providing the tools that are going to make sure that user's experience is maintained far and beyond what it is that they would access. Now, if we then look at what's unique about us, we simplify that to the most straightforward approach that we possibly can do with our load master tools, the templates that we've pre-built for you, the ability for you to take our product, and if anybody wants to put me on the spot and challenge me on this, is to take our templates, deploy our virtual instances, and deploy a load balancer for the applications that they're deploying within minutes and not hours, is where we really shine when it comes to the unique selling point we can offer. That again, then with our support that we offer, which I mentioned is usually above 98%, as we've shown, and really building that partnership that we offer, that sort of invisible relationship with a visible impact is what we aim to deliver. If we can get some USPs from that, I'm more than happy to discuss those in more detail with anybody that would like to discuss that.
Cool. So I said I'd keep us on track. We've got a couple of minutes left, Tim. So final call for anybody watching live. Put your questions in via the Bright Talk Q&A or tweet us. If we run out of time today, we'll give you our contact details so we can continue the conversation afterwards. Tim, from my point, again, I'll put you on the spot. Hopefully, I've asked you many questions that solution providers want the answer to. Is there anything that you wish I had asked you today that perhaps I haven't?
What have we already discussed? I suppose the questions to ask is really, how do I get hold of your product? That would be a good question to ask, isn't it?
I've been the salesperson, yeah.
How do I sign up? How do I get access to it?
Well, what's the next step for people watching? Perhaps they've got a load balancer product. I want to do a more in-depth comparison. You've been really open and honest about what the competition looks like. Maybe they're using open source and hit some of the brick walls that you've talked about. Or maybe completely new, as I'm looking at the audience, and there's going to be a lot of people completely new to load balancing here. And they're right, okay, how can I take the next step? What does the next step look like for them?
Well, the next step really is have it, try it. We offer a number of trials that you can access. You can go to kemp.ax/try, nice and straightforward. So you can download our product in that approach. There's the free to use demos that we offer. There's the trial licenses that you can put into place. And then the other approach is sign up for a Kemp ID. So if you go to our website, go to the top right, drop down for partner, click partner, and you will be able to access all of them, the resources that we offer, and things like the free trials. And that's really where we aim to start with a lot of people. From my experience, I've spoken to many company owners, I've spoken to many sales departments, and yes, nice heard of it, but when we put this in the hands of the engineers, the solutions architects, they see it, they use it, and they go, I've got a need for that. And they then go and start deploying it. And that is where we would really like people to join us in putting it to the test.
Yeah. Which leads us nicely to perhaps our closing question here. So people are asking how they can reach out to us afterwards. David specifically asked, he said, how can I get a hold of the interview that you did with Ray Downs? So David, if you go to my website, tubblog, TUBBLOG.co.uk /Kemp, I've put together a landing page there with all of the resources that we've talked about, all the independent interviews and videos that I've done. If you want to reach out to me to continue the conversation, at Tubblog, TUBBLOG on Twitter is a good way to do it. Tim, if anybody wanted to continue the conversation or to ask more questions, how can they reach out to you?
More than happy for anyone to reach out to me via email. It's tswainson@kemp.ax, or give me a little search on LinkedIn, drop me a message, let's connect, let's discuss how we can partner.
Fantastic. Well, this has been fun today. We've got loads of really good questions. You've been really open and honest in the answers that you've given to those. Hopefully, for everybody watching at home, this has been a really good either introduction to load balancing, or if you're already using load balancing, an introduction to how Kemp can maybe raise the bar for you with the next gen load balancing. Tim, thank you so much for organising this today. It's been my pleasure to join you.
Thank you very much for joining us. And thanks everybody that's spent some time listening to what we've had to say.
Thanks, everybody. That concludes today's webinar. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.